get wired in. Welcome to another episode of Wired In with Appaveli. So today is episode 5. I'm going to talk about C# arrays or arrays in C#. So basically an array is basically a fixed number, a fixed set of numbers, or fixed set of data. It's a collection of data. Arrays can be complex as a beginner. I remember when I started learning how to write code, I struggled with arrays, but the more you practice and you think of use case scenarios, arrays are not that difficult. So let's talk about our first array. Let's create our first array. So on the last episode, I talked about methods, and I said from now on, for the most part, I'm going to use methods to demonstrate examples in code because it makes it more readable. As you can see here, it's more readable this way, and instead of having all this code in the main, if you're watching the video, that's kind of annoying. So it's more elegant this way. And plus it's easier. You want to keep the main method clean as possible. So here I have a static method called print array. Now the reason why I'm declaring these as static, if you remember with method static, is because I can just call this in the main because main is static. I don't have to create a new instance to just call this method. So there. So here I have a string of arrays. So here, to declare an array, you specify the data type. In this case, it's a string. You have 2 brackets, and then you declare the name, and you set that equal to, and then you set the curly braces. And since this is the string, this is the first element, which is 0. So also in arrays, 0 is actually 1. So you know how in computers, 1s and 0s, so 0 is really 1. That's how it is for arrays. So this is index 0, and this is index 1. So 1, 2, so 0, which is 1, 1, which is 2. So the first index is my, and then the second index is my array. And to print this array, we need to loop over each element. So, because if you don't loop over the element, if you simply just print this out, it's just going to print out the object. It's going to pretty much print out the object that's pointed to in memory. So here we're going to use the for each statement, which is really easy to iterate elements in an array. So you use for each keyword, parentheses, and then we're going to declare a variable, which is string s. So basically we're saying, plain English really, for each string s in my array. So for each string that we declare s, so for each s, and I didn't want to do that, s in my array, we're just going to print it out. So let's go ahead, uncomment this, and we're just going to print the array. All right. There we go. My first array. Pretty easy, right? So let's go ahead and comment this back out because we won't need this. Let's go to our second. So another static method, but this time I'm going to return an array of integers. So here I'm declaring my return type as int array. Again, arrays declared with 2 brackets, and I just called this number array just because I wanted to, or for simplicity. And then I'm going to declare an array called my numbers, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I don't know why I chose even numbers, but I did. So there you go. And here we're going to just do a regular loop. So here, when you do a for loop, you declare int I, and I is just for simplicity for index, set that equal to 0. So I is less than my numbers dot length, which is the length of this array, and then you increment I, which in this case we call it index, right? So here, just randomly, just created two variables, x and y. I set x to 2, y to 4. So now that we loop through the array, I'm going to write to the console I, which is the index of my numbers array. So we're looping through this array and it's going to print out these numbers. So I times x times y. And so since this returns an array, we have to return my numbers. So after we loop through this, it's going to return the value of I times x times y, which I is just an easy way just to loop through these elements. So let's uncomment the code, number array, and let's see what happens. All right, start without debugging. So 0, 8, 16, 24, 32. That's what we get for our number array. Now you can just simply do the math and see if I missed any steps here. But for the most part, this is right, I believe. And if it's not, you can here's another thing I want to mention. If you see a mistake, don't hesitate to send me an email or reach out to me on social media, because I make mistakes. So now let's go to print 2D array. Now we're going to print a 2D array of strings, and this time we're going to pass it as an argument. Now this can kind of be confusing in a sense, but it's really not. So here we have static void print 2D array, and we're going to pass a string of and we're declaring this as a multi-dimensional array. So the reason why we have the bracket and the comma in between the bracket, this is, specifying this will be a 2D array or multi-dimensional array, and we're just going to call this ARR, short for array. So now, in order to print these elements, we have to go through two loops. We have to loop over both. Since it's a two-dimensional array, we have to have two for loops. So we have to loop through I, and we have to loop through the left side and the right side, basically. So here, follow along here. So for I equals 0, I is less than array, which is our argument here in our method that we'll pass when we call this in our main. So we're going to get the length of the first index, and then we're going to increment that. So then right after that, we're going to create another loop to loop through the other side of the array, basically. And we just declare this as j equal to 0, and then we're going to j less than array dot get length index 2 j increment j. So I plus plus j plus plus is basically incrementing. If we're doing something where we were, I guess, decreasing, we would de-increment, but we're not doing that in this case. And here we're just going to do console.writeLine element, and this is basically just going to print the element of the two-dimensional array I and j, and then we're going to pass array I and j. Make sense? So before we do that, let's go to our main and let's just uncomment print 2D array. And created it. So here I created a new variable. Since we're passing this method with an argument of a two-dimensional array, and it's a string, and our argument here is a string. So I'm going to declare a new array, string, and this is specifying two-dimensional array or multi-dimensional array. And we're going to call this the new array, and we're going to set that to new string, new multi-dimensional array, and I'm just going to print out a string of numbers from 1 to 8. And how you do that is you say string, bracket, comma, as you can see here, new array, this is the name, set this to new string, don't forget the bracket, comma, and then don't forget you have to have two braces. So this is the outer brace, and then when you highlight it, it'll let you know that it's matching up. And then for a multi-dimensional array, this is for the first set. So 1 and 2, right? Two-dimensional array. So then we're going to call our print to the array, and we're going to pass the new array. So let's print this and see what happens. Here we go. Element 0, 0 is 1. 0, 1, 2. 1, 0, 3. 1, 1, 4, 2, 0, 5, 2, 1, 6, 3, 0, 7, 3, 1, 8. So we just created a two-dimensional array. Or as you say, multi-dimensional, but it's a two-dimensional. It's a 2D array. And you can go into detail more about arrays in the documentation. I'll post the links in the show notes. But there you have it. I want to give a simple overview of arrays. It's pretty straightforward. Just follow the code. The code will be available on GitHub. Also, just play around with this too. Pull the code, make some changes, create new arrays, play around with jagged arrays, which is array of arrays. That's something that I didn't cover, but that's something for you to go out and learn on your own. But if you have any questions, you can always reach me. And this is where you can reach me. You can reach me on Instagram at Appaveli Podcast, or you can just reach me directly at Appaveli, Appaveli, on Twitter at Appaveli. You can reach me there if you have a question. And also subscribe to the YouTube channel, Wired In with Appaveli, where you can see the video as I'm talking. Because some might like to watch and look at the code at the same time, or some people like to listen and look at the code at the same time. Whatever your learning preference is. Later, I might go live on Instagram and maybe YouTube at the same time as I record this. I haven't decided yet, but I think I'm probably going to go live on Instagram. If I don't go live doing the podcast, I might do a quick live video just talking about the podcast or whatnot. So I haven't decided yet. So also, please rate the podcast 5 stars on iTunes. You can subscribe where all podcasts are available. And to subscribe to the podcast, just simply visit appaveli.com, appaveli.com. And I look forward to bringing you more tutorials. So next week, I think I might talk about array list. I might get into data structures. Yeah, so I think I'm going to start off with array list. So I'm going to get into arrays and talk about array list, and I might compare the two as well. So look forward to that. I look forward to doing that. That should be pretty fun. That should be really, really fun. And then we may do some small console applications really soon. I just want to get the basics out the way. So once we really start building applications, or when you see code of me building an application, I want you to get wired in with me, and I want you to learn. I really want you to get this, because coding is fun. So that's it for this episode. And I hope you learned about arrays in great detail. I hope you continue to learn more in depth about arrays and just C# in general, programming in general. And until next time, stay wired in, and I'm out.